Title card up, next Planning and Zoning Commission. Planning and Zoning Commission with Planning and Housing. Director Kelly Diekman sit at a curved dais.
Call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make our recommendations based on city codes, the facts presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item. Please direct your input to the commission. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. If you wish to speak, please fill out the speaker information card and present it to the recording secretary. We ask that you come to the microphone to speak so that all comments may be recorded. The order of the proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. City staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of city staff. The applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will be invited to come forward to offer comments and questions. Once public comment is closed, city staff and the applicant will have an opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission then will discuss all of the application based on all presentations and any comments given and come to a recommendation for city council. The discussion may include further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. And with that, we'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is introduction of commission members.
Julie Winter.
Mike Sullivan.
Matthew Voss.
Kyle Hosworth.
Jim Lickenstorf.
All right, and we'll move to item 3 on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to approval of the minutes of June 3rd, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes of June 3rd, 2026, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And we move to public forum. So this is the opportunity, if anyone would like to come up and speak on about an item or a topic that's not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to do so. Seeing none, we'll close the public forum and we'll move to item 6, preliminary plat for Tabor Development at 5120 Tabor Drive.
Good evening. You may remember this property from a few weeks ago. It was recently rezoned. The third reading of the ordinance was at the most recent council meeting. And we have a preliminary plat before us this evening. So taking this property, you can see a close-up of it here, and subdividing it into 5 lots there on the west, and then a remainder outlot to the east. So the 5 lots are each over 7,200 square feet with 77 feet of frontage. So they correspond in size roughly to the neighboring or to the nearby lots that are in the Sunset Ridge subdivision. The outlot is 0.89 acres reserved for future development. This is an existing outlot that is a remainder of development that was part of, it was recently annexed into the city several years ago. It was broken off from the church property to the south, the Lutheran Church of Hope, although it was never owned by the church. It was owned by the original landowner who sold it to the current developer. The site will have to have 10% open space, and which can either be addressed on the outlot there or by joining the Sunset Ridge HOA. Staff does recommend approval, and I can take any questions if you have them.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go for it.
So you're saying that the church and the developer have no connection, no shared ownership?
None.
Okay.
The only connection is that the drainage, so just to the south here is a retention detention pond on the church property. And when that pond was designed, it was the capacity was created such that it could accommodate the development on this property. That is the only connection.
Okay, so I can understand the five lots that are buildable, but why the outlot today? Why not have this be a question for later, after they've resolved whatever issues they have with Hunziker?
I guess I don't quite understand the question, but maybe the applicant can.
So you have
Deal with
five
that.
lots, and then you have the outlot ZZ.
Mhm.
Outlot ZZ is not buildable because of some of the property that's owned by Sunset Ridge Hunziker. So why not defer that rezone until later?
It's not a rezoning, it's
I'm sorry.
plat. So it's very common to leave lots that aren't quite ready for development as an outlot. So staff had no objections to leaving it as that. As is, it would be difficult, as we noted in the report, with the amount of street frontage to really divide it into substantially more lots. So that's one of the reasons why it's being left this way, as I understand it.
Is that counting towards their open space?
So there, Benjamin can answer that.
Yeah, if they so you have to have 10% open space, and this is a pretty small piece of property, so it's less than just under 2 acres. So that's about 8,000 square feet or so, a little under 8,000 square feet. So they could meet it there, or they can meet it by joining the HOA. They would just have to formally designate and explain how they were going to meet it.
So let's just clarify. This is not intended to be public open space or private open space. It is reserved solely for development purposes. They're proposing to meet the open space requirement by buying into the HOA of Sunset Ridge. So they become full-fledged members and have responsibilities to pay dues and then take advantage of the assets that are part of Sunset Ridge.
So what could that property be, that outlet be, if it's not single family housing? What else could it be developed into?
It's zoned for single family housing. So
Only
I mean, you
single
could-
family housing, and there's no other special use permits or any other things that could be issued?
As the master plan is approved, only detached single family is allowable on the 2 acres of the site. So any other change to do attached single family or anything else would require a whole rezoning process to come back through public hearings.
Just full disclosure, I live in Sunset Ridge,
Right.
so I'm curious.
I was curious on that, the open space requirement and that whole process. So, it'll go through the process tonight. At what point, I guess, does that open space requirement get fully decided on? And yeah, what steps come after that or before that?
So with the final plat, so this is just the preliminary plat, and then there's a final plat that comes along after this. The final plats go directly to council. They don't come to the Planning and Zoning Commission, so you guys won't see it. But with those final plats come a big thick stack of legal documents pertaining from right of way, making sure you've got clear title to the property and so forth. And at that time, we would want to see that they had they'd finalized everything with, if they're going to join the HOA, with the HOA that all of that had been squared away.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for city staff at this time? Okay. With that, then we would offer the chance for the applicant, if the applicant's here, to come up and make a statement regarding this request.
Good evening. Keith Arneson, 4114 Cochran Parkway. And I really don't have a prepared comment. I talked through some of the issues I think that were out there at the last time that I was before this group. I did want to make myself available for questions, though, that you might have.
Any questions for the applicant?
So I think last time for Outlots Easy, you maybe expressed, and correct me if I'm wrong, you maybe expressed that just plans for that in the future are pretty uncertain. Is that still accurate to say, or?
It'll still be single-family homes. I think there's there's some questions that were kind of uncovered during DRC relative to access and how many lots it might be. If you've seen the site, you probably realize that the first 5 lots were really shovel ready, for lack of a better word, and this other piece is not shovel ready. So it may take some fill to have the proper frontage for some of these homes. Anyway, there are a number of things I think need to be addressed with the second phase of this, which is really how I'm looking at it. But if there are any other concerns, I'd be happy to try to address those. I fully plan on having those be residential lots. There are trees and there's a pond, and those are attractive features for the community.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and at this time, we'd open public comment. If there's anyone from the audience that wishes to speak on this agenda item, please come up and state your name and your address.
My name is Jill Byer, and I am at 512 Westfield Road, so just around the corner from this development. I guess maybe I have questions more than anything. I was at the city council meeting when we rezoned this as well. My first thing in there are what was sent to us about a staff report would be available after the 26th of June on the website, and I don't see that anywhere on the website. I don't know exactly what that even is, but it was just something I didn't see. So if that would be more information for us in the neighborhood, that would be great. My other question was about the width of Tabor Road. It is more narrow than the other roads in the subdivision. And so I'm just a little concerned about having 5 more driveways onto Tabor on a road that's already a little more narrow, that people are walking up and down. And then I do have concerns about that outlot. There are a lot of trees. There's a lot of nature right there. I would be concerned about further development. We're not super happy with what's planned for there now, but even further than that would be a significant concern for the neighborhood. So that is what I have. And I don't know if there are answers to those questions or not, but.
We won't do a back and forth now, but
No,
we
that's
can
fair.
try to answer those questions here after the public comment.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else from the audience that wishes to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. So public comments closed. Does the applicant or city staff have any other follow-up remarks? No, seeing none. Okay. So we'll open it up for discussion for the commission and comments or questions, I guess.
I guess just addressing that comment question about width of Tabor. Are there any? I'm assume that has been looked at, and the road is wide enough for a development of this size.
Correct. The width is considered adequate for Ames. Ames does have slightly narrower roads than some other communities, and part of that is just there's less paving. It does mean that cars go more slowly on the roads. That's partly by design as well. The narrower road you have, the less speeding. We don't want people speeding on residential streets like this. So there is parking. You can see there on the picture on the south side. So there will be less on-street parking. That's true, because there will be more driveways, but there still will be the parking will still be accommodated on the street.
And then the staff report that was referenced, that's just the report with the agenda packet, right? That's available.
Correct. I will confess that I did not check it there, but I'm pretty sure it gets posted up there.
I mean, it's there now. I don't know.
Maybe it wasn't.
It's under the boards and commissions
Yep.
heading, so you got to go to the planning commission to find it.
Yep. So that's available on the city's website. If anyone would like to.
Yeah, specifically under the Planning and Zoning Commission page.
Yep.
So it's not with council, it's not on the Planning and Zoning page. It's under the Planning and Zoning Commission page.
I think if you Google City of Ames Planning and Zoning Commission, you should be able to access the agenda item. And then normally the agendas are linked with all the supporting docs with it, which are the staff reports. So hopefully that's helpful. If not, I'm sure any of these fine folks on the planning staff can help. So
Mhm.
All right, any further discussion or further questions of city staff?
Yeah, and one other thing with regard to the trees, Ames does not have a tree protection ordinance. So there's nothing, staff cannot enforce anything about preserving trees.
Great, thank you. Well, if there's no further discussion, does anyone have a motion?
I would make a motion. I would recommend alternative 1 that Planning and Zoning Commission may recommend that the City Council approve the preliminary plat for Tabor development.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of alternative 1, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right, we'll move to item 7 on the agenda, annexation of Ames Golf and Country Club and the Irons subdivision, single-family home properties, including addresses along Irons Court, Irons Way, 190th Street, and George Washington Carver Avenue.
Can you, I just have the map up there. Can you pull that up for me? I have it open on the top. Yeah. It's the last, page 6. Yeah. It's very slow. There we go. All right. So tonight we are looking at the annexation of the Ames Golf and Country Club and the residential lots that surround it, known as the Iron Subdivision originally. So almost just over 10 years ago, the country club approached the city and Story County and asked for us to approve a rural subdivision. At that time, the property did not touch the city. It was subject to what was known as the Ames Urban Fringe Plan. So some of the perimeter of the golf course was identified as potentially available for housing in a transitional designation, meaning it was to be planned for and set up for development consistent with city standards for at the time that the city was able to or desired to annex it, then it could fit into the city's systems to do that. So when it was approved, water service was designed to city standards. It is provided at Xenia at this time, but eventually would switch to city services. All of the homes and the country club are on septic systems. In a separate matter, there is a requirement at the direction of council for a future sanitary sewer extension to be made to serve the lots that are not on 190th Street. So it'd be the town home lots on the northwest side there, and then the southwest Irons Court homes. So recently, the Borgmeyer Farm property to the south, which is in the city now. So all of the gray area you see on this map was annexed last year. As part of that process, City Council determined that they desired to implement the covenant requirements to have all of these properties annexed to the city now that they did touch the city. So we reaffirmed that with City Council back in June, and we're now commencing with the annexation process. So this map shows you two important things. The green area is areas that we received annexation applications at the request of the city. The orange or red, whatever color that looks like to you, those are properties that are subject to the existing covenants to annex to the city, but they did not voluntarily submit an application. So rather than pursue legal recourse of enforcing a covenant, the city decided to move forward with an 80-20 annexation. So under state law, the city has the ability to include up to 20% of the total territory in the annexation as non-consenting property owners. You would have seen this in various circumstances throughout time here at the Planning Commission. It's allowed under state law to avoid islands, as well as to make more uniform boundaries. So staff believes that the combination of preventing some islands with the annexation, as well as making a very uniform boundary along GW Carver and 190th Street meets state code. So we're recommending approval of this annexation as being consistent with state law, as well as being consistent with our comp plan, which identified that the city would grow in this direction with this pattern of development with open space for the country club and with acknowledgement of the existing residential that's there. So the action before the commission is to make a recommendation of consistency with the comp plan to the city council. And then there'll be a formal public hearing by the city council to decide to approve the annexation and then forward it on to the state city development board for final approval through state processes.
Questions for city staff?
Yeah, so the 80-20 state law, that is 80 to 20% of land within the,
Correct.
okay. What percentage is the country club of this annexation?
It alone, I think, is over 80%.
Okay.
I believe. I don't have that in front of me, but off the top of my head, I believe that is true.
It looks like it, but yeah. Okay. So when they did the rural development, they signed a covenant that said we will.
So the country club did. So the country club owned all the land at that time. And so then to get approval from both the county and the city to do the subdivision, they agreed to certain covenants that are recorded against the property and apply to successors in ownership. And that's why it applies to the homeowners that are out there now.
Okay.
Not just to the country club.
Sure. That was what I was trying to clarify. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Just so I understand, if you go to page 4 on the in the PDF, the one that shows the blue circle, is everything adjacent to that already in the city? Sorry, I wanted to ask if what's in the blue, what's adjacent to the blue square, is already in the city.
So the orange line is the city boundary. So to the south, and then most of the railroad to the east is in the city. To the north is county, and to the west is county.
For the audience, he was clarifying on the map that what part around the annexation is part of the city, and it is everything to the south of the orange line.
And then in addition to the properties that are in the annexation, we're obligated to take in half of the right of way abutting the annexation. So we're also taking part of 190th Street and part of GW Carver.
So I'm pretty familiar with, with the 80-20 provision in Iowa code because it's come before us so many times, but I'm not as familiar with there being this provision in covenants for voluntary agreement to voluntary annexation. Like, what does that look like in the covenant? Is the requirement that they submit an application, or what does the requirement actually say?
Effectively, it says at the direction of city council, the property owner will submit a voluntary annexation application to the city.
Okay.
And so we use that commonly for divisions of land adjacent to the city. It's one of the standard covenants that we apply to projects. It has only been implemented or in the process of implementation. This will be the second time. The first time council deferred it for a little bit longer for 2 properties in South Ames. This is the first one that's going all the way through the annexation process. So there's a couple dozen properties around the city at least that have this covenant. It's just that either we haven't grown out that far, or really we just haven't grown out that far, and there hasn't been a reason to move ahead with the annexation request.
Okay, thank you.
So the covenants were all for any subsequent owners as well. So as the country club sold the land, the owners were bound by that. So by utilizing the 80-20 as well, the city is not needing to then execute like legal, like basically lawsuits, right, to force them to be bound by the covenant, or?
Correct. So if we were to seek 100% voluntary annexation, that's the term in state law. I know there's some objections to that term. Yes, we would have to go to court to compel owners to do what is in the covenant.
Okay.
So to save time and cost of going to court, we're following this method.
Thank you.
So and would that same method be followed if it was the land was less than the 80% like because of people not following what was in the covenant, it was less than the 80%, it would still be the same recourse versus the 100% approach?
I mean, I think the short answer is yes. I mean, all owners of property have the same covenant attached to them.
And they can be compelled, whether it's the 100% or the 80-20.
That's our attorney's opinion, is that would be able to be enforced through court.
Thank you.
Well, if the matter before us is consistency with Plan 2040, I said if the matter before us is consistency with the comp plan, I do think it's consistent. This action is consistent with the comp plan, just as an aside.
Any other questions of city staff at this time?
Can you turn it up?
Okay. Clear, is the applicant in this the city, or is it the Ames Golf and Country Club? I guess is the applicant here.
I guess I would say we're the applicant.
Okay.
We've received the applications, but we're the ones that are doing
Sure.
the process.
Okay. Well, then we won't invite the applicant up to make a statement because the city's the applicant. So at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak on this agenda item?
Good evening. My name is Daryl Viggy. I live at 5527 Irons Way. And so we are part of the Irons Way, Irons Court, and we do border on there. I cannot speak to the country club tonight, but I am going to speak for Irons Way and Irons Court. And I'm going to ask you to recommend not annexing Irons Way and Irons Court. I know the city, that's what they want to do, and they've been pretty consistent in doing that. And first of all, I realize that by covenants, you can do it. The city can do it. There's no qualm about that. My thing is they don't have to do it. The people that are involved don't want it done. So I would ask that you recommend to not annex Irons Way, Irons Court. Why am I against it? Well, first of all, this was not a voluntary move. We got a letter in the mail, said, we would like you to do this voluntary application. When I questioned about it, I said, well, you don't have to sign it, but there will be some court action coming out your way. So after a while, I think everybody signed it. When I turned mine in, where it says voluntary application up above, I put involuntary application. I was asked to redo that again. So there's nothing voluntary about this application. The big thing probably for us is the sewer situation. With the sewer situation, the prices that have been bannered around, probably if I take a look at it, it's going to be north of $30,000 per household to get rid of our septic systems and put in the sewer systems that we really don't need. So the economics is one thing. They're going to be tearing up a bunch of land, lawns that look pretty nice just the way they are. Probably the septic systems, 6 to 8 years old, working fine. They're inspected every year, approved by the county. we're going to be annexed probably someday eventually. We are quite satisfied with the services we've got. We've got Xenia, we've got the county taking care of us. We have our septic systems. So I don't see that we're going to gain anything out of being annexed by the city. The Borgmeyer farm, that was a voluntary annexation. The developers wanted it, the city wanted it, everybody's happy. Not the case with Irons Way and Irons Court. A couple other things I want to just mention. Irons Way, Irons Court, if you did not annex us, we would not be an island nor a peninsula. If you take a look at the map, you'll see right across the street is Christ Community Church. Do I think you're going to annex that someday? I don't think so. I think that's going to stay just the way it is for a long time. The other question, and I would like to ask this of staff. My understanding is that the three houses along 190th Street are not going to be required to put in sewer. Would that be correct? And why is that? How can you get by with that and force us to do it and they not have to?
It's questions for the commission.
Yeah,
I can't hear you.
It's questions for the commission. It's not debate with staff.
Okay. Okay, so consider that. He doesn't have an answer for that. So again, I respectfully ask of you, first of all, thank you for your service. I appreciate that. You're in a tough position here. But I would respectfully ask that you recommend not annexing Irons Way, Irons Court. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to come up and speak? All right. Hearing none, we'll close public comment. Does the city have any concluding remarks? Or
I do not.
okay. All right. Well, then we'll open it up for discussion from the commission and questions of city staff.
I will. I'm assuming the 190th houses and the sewer issue are because of some sort of contiguous connection that doesn't exist out to there.
I mean, frankly, the sewer issue has nothing to do with the annexation.
Okay.
So I didn't come prepared to revisit the preliminary plat from 11 years ago that made the decisions about how utilities would be extended to serve different parts of this property.
Okay.
So these were all decisions with the subdivision approval, which was, again, approximately 10 years ago.
Okay.
As the sewer is extended, are the residents required to hook on, or can they retain their septic systems?
It'll be up to city council. So the provision is essentially at the direction of city council, the property owners must pay for the extension of a sanitary sewer and connect to it. So timing and all of that would be at the discretion of city council. So there's options of extending it, awaiting for septic systems to fail to connect, but those are all conversations the city council would need to have in the future.
Is there any standard way that the city council has handled those with previous annexations, or has it really just been on a case-by-case basis?
We have not done this before. So this is the first time the covenants have been essentially implemented.
Right. Okay.
Just to the question, I guess, of like the voluntary, involuntary. So when these lots were sold, the covenant already existed on those lots, correct?
Yes.
That's something that's included in real estate transactions, something that is part of that.
Right.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear, the word involuntary has legal meaning, which is different than what's being described. So in state law, there's voluntary annexations and there's involuntary annexations. Involuntary annexations are a type of process. You have to go to a community vote to take in property and do things that are not what's being discussed here. So within the voluntary, it's the terms of consenting and non-consenting that we're talking about. So involuntary is a wholly different process that I don't know that anybody in Iowa uses, because it's a vote to do things.
I do understand the question before us is whether or not this conforms with the comp plan and the original intent.
Can you get closer to the mic, Jim?
So I understand the question before us is whether this conforms to the comp plan. But I do have a question. Why is the church not included in this if they share half the street?
We have no covenants with the church. We couldn't bring them in if we wanted to.
I see.
And there's more acreage there than we could ever bring in under an 80-20.
That's a good reason.
Yep. And they chose not to voluntarily annex. And again, there's the speaker's correct. There's no real reason to annex the church. We've talked to them about the sewer extension. They have no interest in it at this time. So they'll probably, as the speaker said, they're highly likely to be out of the city for a very long time.
I guess if I could ask staff a comment about the decision before us, if we were to vote against this, what processes or paths exist for the city or beyond the voluntary annexation? Or I guess we would just make a proposal to council so that's.
So you're just making a recommendation. So it's going to go to hearing with the council either way. I mean, if your concern is that not all of the applicants have returned the application, you're asking us to go to court and compel that to happen instead of doing it as an 80-20. I guess that's the only, I guess, option I guess I see.
No, it's just hypothetical.
Okay.
Any other questions for city staff? Any further discussion? All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd move adoption of option 1. Recommended the city council to approve the 80-20 annexation by finding the proposed annexation is consistent with the Ames 2040 comp plan and that the proposed annexation territory creates more uniform boundaries. Additionally, recommend that the concurrent rezoning of the residential properties upon annexation to FSRL zoning.
I would second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second for alternative 1. All in favor of alternative 1, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
All right. As I said, there'll be a city council public hearing on July 28th.
All right. And with that, we'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, zoning text amendment by Quickstar to the commercial general services limitation on fueling positions, gas pumps.
All right. Thank you very much. So the proposed text amendment that you have here is to the the convenience general standards in section 29.810 that you have an attachment for there in your packet. And I'll just go through here real quick and give a kind of a recap of what the proposal is and what it would do. So currently in CGS, if you operate a convenience store, which is the only really allowed form of fueling service in the CGS zone, you have a maximum amount of fueling points, which means gas pumps. So in most typical modern situations, a gas pump can serve 2 vehicles at a time. So 10 vehicles could be fueling at once. The proposal is to eliminate that cap, that maximum in the CGS zone. And in exchange for that, any site plan that proposes a convenience store would go through the zoning board of adjustment for a public hearing and review once staff has reviewed it to make sure that the proposal for the convenience store is harmonious and fits in with the neighborhood and the surroundings and meets the standards of our special use permit for commercial developments. So it is basically, as you see there in the table, in 810 section 2, It would eliminate the minor site plan review under staff. It would replace it with a special use permit review in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And then in 810 Section 3, it would strike any reference to maximum size of gasoline service, as that would be eliminated as it's currently there now. So that is the proposal. I can take any questions and we can go through any details if you'd like. I think we had a email that was sent. Don't know. I believe it was sent on
The property owner for the planned Quickstar voiced their support for the text amendment. That's
So we're getting a Buc-ee's.
Quickstar.
That would be cool.
Why is this going to ZBA and not just staff?
I think so we presented some options to council of whether they wanted to allow for an increase in the number of fueling positions. And one of the options we said was to just remove the standard and essentially let a gas station make their case that it's compatible with whatever arrangement they're going to do. And that's what they said that's how they said they could proceed. It could be staff review if it wasn't deemed an issue of compatibility and weren't concerned about what public input might be.
I think the CGS zoning district, because it is more of a node in neighborhoods, that's where more of the sensitivity issue probably comes from. HOC, for example, which is Duff and Lincoln Way and areas out by Highway 30, they don't have a maximum. But generally, like I said in the report, you get kind of a 5 to 10 fueling point range across the city with some variation in most of our current convenience store or recent convenience store developments.
Can you talk a little bit about that CGS zoning district? I feel like we haven't seen that come in front of the commission very often. Is that accurate? Are there maybe some examples around the city?
Yeah, so the only, actually, there's currently 2 small areas in the community where it's located. So the first, and up until very recently, the only area was at Bloomington and Stang, just north of Somerset, where Casey's and Fairway is. More recently, we did rezone, which this came before you in recent history here, the corner of Cameron School and GW Carver. There's a few lots that are, Quickstar's planning a convenience store there. And then there is actually a small plot of land that is CGS up along 190th. Just west of
Hyde in 190.
Hyde in 190th. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's undeveloped at this point.
So it only exists in growth areas of the city. None of the legacy areas of the city have this zoning district. Right. So it was established with a higher level of restrictions on it and development standards than the older parts of town when it was created.
So why send it through zoning board of adjustment, and why not just the standards were too rigid for various configurations that were desired by sites? I guess, why do we need the variability in the number of pumps? Couldn't they just compel a special, I guess, why this process? I know you mentioned it's because council directed, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
I mean, we presented an option of just keeping it at site plan approval and changing the standard, and council directed to take the more conservative option, which is to make a case-by-case decision based on the configuration of the site. So that's how it is. So in terms of area, it's like 4,000 square feet of additional area on a site to go from 10 to 20. I think that's what we estimated with the original request. I think it's more about orientation. And so staff doesn't really have the authority. I think this would be the way you'd look at it. Staff doesn't have the same criteria that a special use permit has. So if it's administrative approval, it's fundamentally black and white, meet it or you don't meet it, a little bit of discretion on judging, landscaping, some of those kinds of elements. The special use permit has a whole host of additional qualitative expectations that are evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So if there's a concern about compatibility, The special use permit process has an in-depth evaluation and notice requirement. Staff doesn't have those things. If there is no expectation of sensitivity or compatibility, then yes, staff's way more efficient, and then that would just be addressed. So I guess that's the question of where these are. Is there a sensitivity level that justifies it as a special use permit?
And is this the same process that the Stang gas station went through? I mean, obviously it fits with the.
Which gas station?
I think you said it was Stang and Bloomington.
Oh, the Casey's? No. So Casey's met the standard.
Okay.
So it was written the standards is essentially created at the time Casey's was approved. So
Okay.
they had 5 fueling positions, total service 10 cars. That was all approved by staff at that time.
Okay. So the benefit to this, if I were an applicant looking at building a gas station, is that I could make the case for maximum site utilization as long as ZBA went along with it and found it compatible based on standards that we would provide to that group at that time. And it would kind of be a moving target based upon site-specific analysis.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just for clarification, it would go to ZBA only if the gas station wanted to go above that 10 vehicle, or
No, any convenience store site plan will require a special use permit in this zoning district. So any convenience store will go through ZBA regardless.
We
So
didn't.
that was actually my question, I guess, is like, so I get why Quickstar would want this and why, developers maybe would want it, but is the eliminating of that max actually providing ZBA with quite a bit more discretion where they could where something might have been approved in the past, they could say, well, no, we actually think less than 10 is compatible.
The whole
That'd be up to ZBA, right?
project is up for review, not just the count of pumps. So it'll be how you access the site. Where's the parking? Where's the air compressor? Where's the trash enclosure? What's the hours of operation? How does the lighting plan work? All of that will be on the table in the special use permit process.
And just from a planning perspective, I would hate from the city's perspective, I would hate to give up that that control to make sure that you're considering that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert in approving convenience stores, so.
that does also, to me, that seems like a lot to potentially ask of the zoning board of adjustment. If all those factors are potentially up for consideration.
They're going to become experts.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what council wanted. This is what they asked staff to explore. I would assume there's a pretty good reason for it. These are more unique areas. I would imagine that the flexibility of being able to determine what project is compatible, I think, would be a generally good thing, as opposed to having this is your maximum you can go to, and now you've got a gas station in a neighborhood area, potentially in a new development that is way too big because the gas station just wanted to be big, as I understand it.
So maybe this was already answered, but I think about the Casey's Maverick that's across from the Quick Star over by on Graham Avenue, Bell Avenue, in that area. LS Teca East.
Maverick and Quick Star there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that Maverick's got a lot of space. Can they apply under this change to add 10 more pumps?
They're not restricted now because they're in that highway oriented commercial zone.
Okay.
So there is no restriction. So the only place that has a restriction is Casey's on Stang and Bloomington,
I see.
because it's the only one that's ever been built outside of HOC zoning. So all across the city, all of the other stations, when Justin researched it, wide variability in the number of pumps. Some people had 5, 7. Quickstar has 20, not 20 pumps, 20 fueling positions. So it varied all over the place in terms of the size that we saw up and down Lincoln Way, Dayton.
I understand this a little bit better now. Okay, obviously the CGS is going to exist in areas that are more residential in nature.
It's assumed they will border single family homes.
I got it. So we're basically, okay. And do we believe that this
And so this,
CGS is not very common? Like this is not going to.
well, it'll be, so in our planned growth areas, so when you, so I'd say out west, it could be repeated. It's a little unclear. When we go west of Sunset Ridge and go into Boone County, the comp plan has a core designation. Could be more intense. It could be mixed use, and it could be residential. It could be a little more intense. CGS will likely be a zone that appears on one of the corners out there at Lincoln Way and County Line Road. Not a guarantee, hasn't been requested. I believe that's planned. The other expansion areas of the city, again, it kind of depends on the format of how the developer approaches it with integration of use versus separation of use. So in the near term, the most likely place would be out west near Lincoln Way and County Line Road.
Will this new ZBA review give that commission standards by which to review? I mean, it's very vague as far as like meeting. It gives them flexibility, I guess.
I mean, the criteria are established in the code. We're not changing any of the criteria. So if you are a special use in a commercial zone, the same criteria apply to you, whether you're now this gas station convenience store or whether you were mini storage or whatever else needed a special use permit in a commercial zone.
There is, through the SUP process at ZBA, if you look at it in a certain light, you could also see it as there is a bit more scrutiny. There's now a public hearing. There's now a board that's reviewing it in addition to staff review. So there's that context sensitivity that we're looking at in CGS with those neighborhoods that would definitely be analyzed. Whereas other zones in the city, convenience stores don't have to. It's just staff level, and there's no other maximum or limitations.
In some ways, your comment is actually very prescient for this. That could be very possible.
This might be going back further than we have history for, but like when the CGS standards were created, I guess, was there consideration or thought to requiring a special use permit, or has that been discussed before? Or I guess
my impression, neither of us were here, is Casey's wanted 5 gas pumps, and we agreed to 5 gas pumps, and then we drew a line and said no more than 5 gas pumps. That's my understanding. I don't think there was a great debate of should it be 5, 7, 10. It was like, Casey's will take this. Let's draw a line and say no more. And that's what happened. That's what we understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for city staff at this time?
So the commission can recommend alternative 1. If there's a modification you want to recommend, you're more than welcome to make a modified recommendation to city council as well, if that's what the commission wants to do.
Okay, well, I will also open it up. So if the applicant's here, if they'd like to come make a statement on this request.
Good evening. Travis Small with Quick Trip, 1626 Oak Street, La Crosse, Wisconsin. Just want to start with our kind of overall. We're building 2 gas stations down by Cold Links, which will have 10 fueling pumps, which is 20 positions. The other one on South Dakota in Mortensen will also have 10 fueling pumps, 20 positions as well. So I think Quick Trips ask how the code's currently written. We don't build convenience stores with that small of a fueling positions. In some smaller communities, we'll do 16 fueling pumps, which would be kind of the least we go, 16 fueling positions. But here in Ames, most of just due to high density and the population and traffic counts, we typically go for the 20 fueling positions. So that's why we submitted the application to get this zoning code amended. Otherwise, it could really hinder our site on if we develop a convenience store here or not. I think a lot of that, again, not sure if you guys got the letter, but really just the fueling infrastructure and consumer demands has really evolved over the last so many years. Many modern service stations are designed to accommodate higher traffic counts, volumes, improve vehicular circulation throughout our sites, safety, reduce congestion throughout the sites is really our main thing. I think also with Quick Trip sites, we're not a Casey's or a BP or Come and Go Maverick. We're more like a neighborhood grocery store. So we see our customers staying longer in our stores to shop. So when they're parking at the fuel pumps, filling up, they're not leaving immediately like they might be at a Casey's that only have 5 pumps. They're in and out quick. At our stores, they're parking there as a parking stall, going in to shop and then going out, which is also the reason why we have so many fueling positions at all of our stores. So just ask for the approval to get this current code revised so we can have the size of store that we want in the community.
All right, do we have any questions for the applicant? I have one question, I guess. So I guess I could see why Quick Trip would want to, kind of getting back to my question before, I guess, why they would want to eliminate that maximum there. But I guess with having to go to ZBA now, if this were to get approved, are you at all concerned that that might actually make it less likely that you can put in more pumps? It's because of the process that's involved with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we could further discuss with staff. I'm not sure if we have any other options because it got rezoned this way when the developers acquired the land. And I think Kelly could maybe speak to it more, but I think that was the only rezoning option that there was, because we did explore rezoning it when we got the property under contract, and that wasn't an option. So I think from Quick Trip's perspective, we're just trying to find a way that we can at least have the option to get as many fueling pumps as we want, because as it reads today, I'm not sure we would develop the store there if that was our limit. So I'm not sure if Kelly can speak, but if there's another option of more reassurance to get the fueling position numbers we want versus less than what the code currently says, obviously Quick Trip would want to go that way. I think it's a little concerning. I think he mentioned it goes out to like a public hearing for the neighborhood. We get mixed reviews with neighborhoods. Some people want us there because it's amendy. Our stores are super clean and nice compared to other convenience stores. But you look at Des Moines, we're right next to tons of residential neighborhoods. Sometimes it just comes to landscaping requirements. What are those buffers? Here it's a little bit different, which I would compare it to our South Dakota site or the golf course site. You have apartments right next to both those. You have condos right next to both of them. The Dakota one, you have residential right to the north. Here at George Washington and Carver, there's other commercial that's going to be right there as well. The church across the street, and obviously there's some residential there, but it's really an amenity to anybody who is around us, and we just want to be an amenity for the community and also be a good neighbor.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and at this time, if there's anyone from the audience that would wish to come up and speak, we'd open it up for public comment. Hearing none, we'll close public comment. We'll just move straight into discussion and question for city staff.
So regarding CGS, the HOC is not a permissible zone outside of where it already exists. Highway-oriented commercial is not where our growth areas are. So that was an early conversation with the applicant. Now, there is a layer on the site that they're interested in going to. It has a master plan that you all approved. It did direct that the fueling canopy must be on the south side of the property, away from Cameron School Road. So we've seen preliminary designs. I'd say we expect the project to be able to meet the criteria. If we didn't think it could meet the special use permit criteria, we wouldn't put that out there. So again, we don't know what the public input would be. The site we're talking about has limited amount of neighbors at this point. So it's a little different in that sense. I think the special use permit option, when we wrote it, the option could have been to not require that, just increase the number. We really wanted a repeatable process. That's why we proposed a special use permit as the language is here. So there's just one way to do it. We just get caught up in multiple ways to do things. It just gets a bit of an administrative headache at times. If we were starting from scratch, maybe there was a way to build it into master plans approvals instead. This site already has one. So if we went and made that the option, now they have to go back through a rezoning process, which is even more time than a special use permit process. So kind of with where we're at, I think you effectively have two choices: do what we're recommending, or recommend no particular process and just keep it administrative. I don't think there's really any other choice out there.
I think the course is good on this, as far as now that I'm in a better understanding of what's happening.
Do you think there's any path in between those where it would be keeping the current administrative approval for those smaller gas stations, but then raising to the special use permit for the larger?
I mean, you can make that recommendation. Our position just was it wasn't worth having more than one standard.
Yeah. I mean,
There's not enough sites. There's not enough projects to be like, oh, we're going to save ourselves 5 projects a year if we do it one way or the other. So if that's the interest of the commission, go ahead and make that recommendation.
Would that make it less burdensome from a city staff perspective? I think we want to do what's easiest for developer within reason, as well as staff admin.
I don't consider us in that equation.
No, you are. You
No,
are.
it isn't. No, that's not. We don't make recommendations really about how easy it is for us.
Well,
It's
you're
always easier to do
recommending
administrative review because you don't have to write a staff report, but that's not how we approach things. We try to approach it as what's the best for the community in terms of evaluating potential issues with the efficiency of an administrative process. So that's how we look at it. Justin is always available to do work.
I mean, just to talk out loud for my perspective, I do worry, at least on some level, about making certain gas station projects difficult to get through. Down the line, we can't predict how neighborhoods will feel about different projects, what the zoning board of adjustment and how they will feel about different projects. So even if we think the process makes sense today, maybe down the line it doesn't make near as much sense. So that's where I have some concern. But I think on a strong level, like some, approval, especially for these larger projects, makes sense. So that's just kind of, I honestly don't know how I would vote at this moment on if we voted on alternative one.
I think with something like this, it's super easy to over-engineer yourself into a bureaucratic nightmare more than anything. And especially with the 2 of them that are currently in the space, I feel like we might be just looking at over-engineering this right now if we start trying to break it up into certain things. I feel like.
Yeah, I kind of feel like just based on this, I'm familiar with, this is the site, it's at South. Did we get a particular site that was in question, right?
It's going to be the Cameron School Road GW Carver site.
Yep.
It's the only site. It's what Quickstar is interested in. It's also the only site that's really available for development right now.
Yeah.
So the South Dakota site and the South to the East 16th or South 16th site are both HOCs, or not both HOC and CCR,
CCR.
Community Commercial Regional.
There you go. I mean, I feel like as long as we have guardrails on this, honestly, my personal thought is that it's fine. For a minute, I was swayed by well, why don't we just do the same process for under 10? But it does sound like there's so few of these projects that will come forward in the next 5-6 years under this specific zoning designation that it probably would be less staff time to have it go under the current standard, but at the same time, it'll get a thorough review and make sure it'll blend with all residential character. I don't know. If staff is recommending that, it seems like it's reasonable.
Since the applicant's okay with this, I mean, I'm going along. I actually think it's maybe going to end up being a little more restrictive, but I'm okay with what the group decides on this one. I'm okay with the proposal, I guess.
Then I'll just, I move for alternative 1.
Second.
We have a motion and second for alternative 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right. And now we'll move on to commission comments. Does anyone have any comments?
Working on anything for next time?
No. So the 15th would be your next meeting. I don't believe we'll have that meeting.
I don't want to unnecessarily prolong meeting, but I was a little curious with the hubbub about data centers and the data center and the recommendation we made at the last meeting. I guess where that recommendation stands, I guess, in line with the listening session.
Right. So at the beginning of June, you looked at a definitional, adding a definition to zoning ordinance for data centers, and then by adding a definition, placing them more discreetly into the zoning ordinance. And you made a recommendation for a size limit and some limitations on where they go in the city. So we did not take that forward to council yet. So after you discuss that, the discussion of data centers kind of came up on their own. So we're holding off. City Council is exploring a lot of different things now. So your second part of your motion was to consider other standards being added for data centers. So that's the public feedback is what are your standards? What are your expectations? How are you going to address a whole host of issues? A number of the things that you all discussed as well. So at this point, it's in a holding pattern. It will not go to council any sooner than the end of July. They're going to have, on the 14th, they're going to talk a little bit more about some of the legal parameters, zoning parameters that can apply to data centers. I don't know it'll come back to you unless we're going to go adopt a bunch. The second part of your recommendation was if we had to come back and adopt special standards, then we'll have to come back with another text amendment. If we just do definitions and say yes or no in the zoning ordinance, that would be what you already looked at. There's a lot of ways it could go at this point. So stay tuned. It may or may not come back to you.
It's not the last one.
Yep.
I know that's true. Thank you. All right. Any further staff comment?
I do not think so.
All right. Well, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.